My name is Vivian King. I'm Vice President of Community Relations at Aurora Healthcare, and I've been tasked by Brenda Moore to introduce our moderator for today. How many people in the room are from Wisconsin? Okay. How many people are from Milwaukee? Okay, so you know the next person that I'm going to introduce. Her name is Dr. Joan Prince.
Ambassador.
And she is, I got you, give me a second, I got you. She is the Vice Chancellor of Global Inclusion and Engagement at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. But we are most proud because in 2012, our President, Barack Obama, appointed her to the General Assembly of the United Nations as Ambassador. So please put your hands together for Dr. Joan Prince, who will take over for the program.
Thank you, gorgeous baby sister King. She is a jewel, not just in Milwaukee, but nationwide, and we are proud of you. She has had challenges and has bounced back braver, sassier, and just a sweetheart, so I thank you for that. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. How are you? Prayer breakfast, as Vivian asked, how many were at the prayer breakfast? Okay, so those of you who weren't, we're going to let what was in there rub off on you. As Sister Caesar started discussing my Thanksgiving meal, which I am not cooking, but I will be visiting someone who will cook it. Greens, beans, potatoes, tomatoes. I mean, you know what she said this morning now. Come on. Come on. So we want that spirit to invade this room because we have work to do. There is work to do. I'm going to say this because it leads into the introduction of someone that, you know, there are people in your life that you love, and there are people that you love and respect, and there are people that you love, respect, and honor. And let me set the context for the person that I am about to introduce. I want you to think back, and I'm going to ask you the question, where were you the morning of November 9th, 2016? I declined the offer to go to New York for a celebratory party. I declined the offer to poll watch with friends. I wanted to be with the women of my family to watch what I had asked God to make history. But when he said no, I shed a few tears. I was devastated. And then I got up off my knees and said, when God says no, he tells you to find direction and to look for your Moses. Look for your Deborah. Look for the individual that I have sent to you for a vehicle, and don't call me again until you do that. Amen. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's what we did. We looked to an individual who was the first African American elected to Congress from the state of Wisconsin's 4th Congressional District. We looked to an individual who might have been born a little outside of Milwaukee, but make no mistake, she's ours. She's ours. But we looked towards a woman who cares about those that nobody else bothered to care about. We look to a woman who's authentic. She doesn't care who's in the room. She will say the same thing to you that she says to the press. She doesn't care about the superficial things in life. I used to tease her, and I'd smile at her and say, you know, you are just precious. And she would say, people are precious. That's what she is. We love her. I know that I don't want to extend this introduction, but I have to tell you, when I get a chance to shout out about her, this morning at the prayer breakfast, and as Vivian knows, I'm not the best on technology. She's working with me. But I hit Facebook with a picture of Congresswoman, my Congresswoman, your Congresswoman, and said, I thank you for caring about those who nobody else chooses to care about. So Hosting this wonderful issues forum is our Congresswoman from the 4th Congressional District of the state of Wisconsin. I need you to hear it and say it and stand up and clap for our Congresswoman Gwen Moore.
Good morning, everyone. Is the mic not on?
Is the mic on?
Is it on?
We're here on the dais, please.
Okay, thank you so much. We, again, because we're starting late, I'm going to try to make sure I limit my introductions and my remarks and keep them as tight as possible. But I would be remiss not to introduce a lot of the staff people, my staff people, who have made this all possible. Please all stand up. My Chief of Staff, Sean Gard, Ismira H., who works here in the DC office. Shirley Ellis, everybody knows Shirley.
Yes.
Shirley is the District Director and Senior Advisor in Milwaukee. Hope DeVogas, Daryl Gibbons II. Don't stand up, Khalif. You don't work for me no more. Daryl. Everybody knows Brenda. She's outside the room.
No, she's right here.
Oh, is she? Where? I can't see her. Brenda Moore. Is she? She's on my political team on the other side. Chris Troll is outside. Everybody knows Chris, that's for sure.
Chris.
Yolanda Faulkner, who works on my political team as well. And so, thank you so much. Nairobi Craddock is somewhere. She's outside. See, you can tell that there's people working, so they can't even be in the room to be acknowledged. I appreciate him so much. I have a former staffer here who now lives in California. So Ross Spence, stand up. She's here with her husband, Dr. Ian Harris. It is my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker here today. Someone who you have all seen on MSNBC. Leading the nerd group, really educating us, not just entertainment, but actually educating us. She is currently the Maya Angelou Presidential Chair at Wake Forest University. She's an alumnus of Wake Forest University, and they've brought her back. She's the executive director of the Pro Humanite Institute and the founding director of the Anna Julia Cooper Center. She is also editor, she was editor at large for Elle.com, and she remains, trust me, a sought-out speaker. I'm telling you, but of course we got Brenda. There was no escape for turning us down, because we put somebody on her that make sure she got here. She is such a renowned. She's an author. I don't know where she gets all this energy from. She has written. She's the author of Sister Citizen: Shame, Stereotypes in Black Women in America. Also, author of an award-winning Barbershops. She has all these words in her titles: Barbershops, Bibles, and BET. Everyday talk and political thought. And so she has a doctorate. She's been on the faculty of the University of Chicago, Princeton University, Tulane University. She she has honorary degrees from many, many universities, and you have the full rights when you get these honorary degrees. They think long and hard about who they're going to give them to.
Yes.
Meadville Lombard Theological School, we didn't know that, y'all. She's also like a minister. Winston-Salem State University, Eckerd College, and New York University. She has 2 gorgeous daughters. You've seen one of them on TV, Sassy. And her husband, James. James, is he here today? Where you at,
Oh,
James?
did James move? Did he step out? Oh, he's back
James, you in
there.
the back.
Okay, wave, James.
Yeah, wave, James. We got to respect the brothers. This is not for sisters only. And we appreciate you for supporting her and coming out to join her here today.
Thank you, Congresswoman.
And she is my sister. I love her. And you're on.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm yield back
That's
to
okay.
you.
I'm just going to set a little bit of context and then, because I need you to hear from
on the
Gann.
bio that is probably only really important in this room, and that
Oh,
is
what's
that
it?
the youngest daughter was born in Waukesha.
Yes,
Oh
Waukesha.
my God.
Yes. Or as we said earlier, Waukesha.
All right.
I'm just
Waukesha?
saying, and we didn't know it was called Waukesha, and the baby's name almost became Waukesha.
Waukesha. The Lord is good. So let me help set the context because I want you to hear from them, but I always like to set the context first. Before I do that, could I ask all of the elected officials in the room to stand? Stand up so we can give you your props. There we go. Look at them. Looking good. Looking good. Thank you. And if you promise 5 seconds, I don't need a dissertation, but 5 seconds, and I'll take care of you in a moment. Name, where you from, who you represent. Go.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Russell Campbell II, and I'm representing Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Thank you.
Alderman.
David Pryor, State Representative, 17th Assembly District in the City of Milwaukee.
Yeah,
State Representative David Bowman, Congresswoman, State Representative.
that's right.
City of Milwaukee, and Shore.
Yeah.
Stephana Taylor, Walker County Supervisor representing the Second District. Senator Latonya Johnson, Milwaukee.
Yes.
Shantia Lewis, Alderwoman in Milwaukee. I'm honored, I'm just here, and I'm thankful.
That's my alderwoman. I just need you to know that. Okay.
And you are?
Martha G. Scott from Michigan.
Oh, Martha! Hey!
Former state senator, serving along with Gwen.
Yes!
Thank you. Thank you. And please.
Louder!
Louder.
But I'm also president of the Gwen Moore International Fan Club.
Yes, it is. Thank you very much. And then I'm going to ask you to please give a warm welcome. You know what I said about Congresswoman Moore and what she does for individuals? Is there a Portia McCollum in the room? She left her purse, and they just want you to, could you just identify yourself to Shirley, please? Shirley, wave your hand so she'll know who it is. We don't go without our purses. I want you to give a warm U.S. welcome, and particularly for our Congresswoman Gwen Moore. She is all about connections, and this morning we have a member of Parliament, Professor Kilian Munyama, who's a Polish member of Parliament.
Yay!
We need to honor you. And please know, thank you, that he is part of an Afro-European delegation, members of Parliament throughout Europe, that Congresswoman Moore is sponsoring during CBC, which encourages transatlantic dialogue of people of African descent in elected offices. So we thank you for that.
Yeah!
And then finally, would you give a warm welcome, and I think you're in the room still, Dr. Nisha Thompson from the U.S. Helsinki Commission.
There she is. Thank you, Dr.
Okay. Final comment from me, hopefully, is I am going to pose a question, ask the Congresswoman, and I like to call her Sora Melissa, to weigh in. And then I'll pose one more question because we want to hear from you. So I need you to start to think of your questions. I want everyone to, well, raise the right hand. I will not come to the microphone, hog it, act a fool, and state only a very short question. That takes 10 seconds. Thank you so much. So right now, if I could have this theme from Devastation to Destination. And I'm going to ask to start our Congresswoman and then turn it over to Melissa Harris Perry for opening comments, and then I will pose your question. Thank you.
So when Ambassador Dr. Joan Prince, that's a royal name. I mean, and all of that, ain't none of that made up or adapted. This is who she is. When she said, what were you doing on November 9th? I turned to Dr. Harris Perry and made a confession. I may as well make it to y'all. I was in the bed. Angry, upset, tore up from the floor up, devastated. I kind of knew it was going to happen because I had been traveling. And it's hard, you want to ignore all the signals and tell yourself it ain't really happening. But I had been to Michigan. I was in Wisconsin. And you know, and I was not proud. Brenda called me and said, Gwen, stop looking at the news. They got a Beverly Hillbillies marathon on. Turn and watch that. It's the truth. Well, it was. It was just, you know. So, you know, it has really been a journey and a process to get where I am here today. You know, from devastation to destination. And really, when I stopped and thought about it, I was like mad at everybody. I mean, I just went through the list of the people that I was angry with. I was very, very angry with white women. I mean, and I'm sure Dr. Harris Perry has a lot of demographics about, but I was just mad at him. My college roommate, who I met 48, how old is my daughter, years ago? Yeah, I'm talking about my other, Maureen, yeah, that I met all those years ago, 48 years ago, is a white woman, and that's when I started telling her about how mad I was at white women. She was denying it. No, educated white women, yes they did. We got to it. I was extremely, extremely angry at all of the Bernie people, very mad at them because I felt like so many of them had not voted or voted third party, had been divisive, hadn't come together. I was mad at people who voted third party. I was mad at not all white men, because we know how they're going to vote, but I was mad at that small margin of white men who had been part of organized labor, had benefited from it, should have known better, that voted. I was extremely angry with all the people who didn't vote at all. And my poor sister Jackie is a double amputee, and I was mad at her. I said, you could have called somebody. You couldn't have did any door, but you could have picked up the phone. You could have done something. And where I have come, just as an opening sort of statement, is that I have found myself really being in league with spiritual leaders, even new thought leaders, people like Iyanla Van Sant, who has been here with us previously as one of our, we only have distinguished guests. And it's true, we don't have just anybody come up here. People like Marianne Williamson, who, Nelson Mandela's statement has been, she wrote it, it's been attributed to him. And these are people who say that we have got to embrace forgiveness. And before we can move to that destination, we have got to forgive. And I think that in order to come together, we've got to forgive ourselves. I was even mad at some Republicans because, I mean, how can you, as the kind of Republicans that I know, and Wisconsin, of course, was one of the states that had rejected Donald Trump in the primary. And how can you be a person of integrity and have voted for him? But we have got to say, when we look at our body politic and when we look at where the standing of our nation in this country, in the world, we can't move forward until we forgive ourselves. This is a democracy. We get to elect who we want, and we get to change our minds too. And so, with that, I will yield.
Please.
Thank you. So I remember quite well where I was. I'm not going to talk so much about the next morning, but the night, election night. I had an extraordinarily fabulous and very hard 2016. I think all of us did. Had a hard 2016. It was a rough year. Kind of in a like stars and moons kind of way hard year. Obviously, the MHP show ended in, I think, January, February of the year. And as brutal as that was, as hard as it was to not have the opportunity for me to engage with all of you during what was, for me, a profoundly important moment in our democracy. What it gave me an opportunity to do was to engage very intimately with 30 young people. So I had 30 young people, Democrats and Republicans, in a program called Wake the Vote. So I teach at Wake Forest University. This crew called Wake the Vote, we went on a journey that we thought was going to be Iowa to the inauguration. That's a nice ring, Iowa to the inauguration. It ended up being Iowa to the Women's March because there was a thing that happened after the inauguration. We just couldn't have known that at the beginning of the program. When the program started in January of 2016, we thought it was going to be a boring election year. Not much to see here. Everybody knows it'll be Jeb Bush and Hillary Clinton over pretty early. You know, Hillary will probably win. It's not what it turned out to be at all. Instead, obviously an excruciatingly intense and polarizing year. But because I was on a bus with 30 young people, Democrats and Republicans, Black, white, Latino, Asian, most of them voting for the very first time, some of them unable to vote because they are undocumented, some of them from homes of economic means, some of them having grown up in poverty, some of them students who had gone to the university, whose parents had gone to the university, and some of them first-generation students. In the primaries, I forced them to work for whoever it was whose name I drew out of the hat. In the summer, we went to both the Cleveland RNC and to the Philly DNC. And they were able to work over the course of the summer for anyone they wanted. And then in the fall, we were in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, one of the swingiest of the swing states and one of the swingiest counties in one of the swingiest of the swing states. Like Congresswoman Moore, I knew with absolute certainty that Donald Trump was going to win the American presidency. There was absolutely no question in my mind. I was not even slightly thrown off. James will tell you that, your students, especially students that you are that intimate with, you basically become like their mom, which means they think that you don't know anything. So regardless of having an earned PhD and multiple honorary doctorates and having, hosted a television show about politics for 4 years, and I literally would put up the maps and I'd explain why Donald Trump was going to win, and they were like, no, you're not. I mean, even my Republican students were like, yeah, whatever. So what I will tell you is that I was not thrown off. I'm not going to say I was happy, but I wasn't distressed. I'll also tell you that if I'd had a TV show, y'all wouldn't have been thrown off either. I mean, I don't think the outcome would have been any different, but I'd at least had you ready. Every time I would, meet with folks from the Clinton campaign, I just had friends and stuff who worked for her. I'd say, y'all really should move your offices to Little Rock. You are doing yourselves no favors being in Brooklyn. Now, let me walk through that for a second, because I've heard already today a few things that I think are so important. One is, I was mad, I was hurt, I was angry, I prayed, and then, then I got up. And of course, because that's what black women do. So I do understand that many black women were shocked, angry, distressed, maybe even had a sense of knowing, felt hurt, but Big Sean bounced back.
Yep.
Because, like, the idea that a racist, sexist, unqualified person occupies the White House is kind of like Wednesday. It is very important that we not allow some kind of bizarre revision of American history that started happening during the election and continues to happen even until Charlottesville, that says, this is not us. In what world is this not us? Let me just tell you a few statistics that are among the most knowable, easily available, downright Googleable things that one could know. This is quite us. Oh no, a racist will be elected president. I'm gonna give you 15 seconds to name for me the 3 American presidents who were not racist. Go. You for sure, absolutely sure that President Obama, my cousin Pukian, had absolutely no anti-black emotions? Now, I don't mean that he was a racist, like he's running around like harming black folks, but what we know from IAT tests is that all Americans have a certain level of anti-black bias, all of us, because we are raised in a culture that generates anti-black bias. And so even President Obama, extraordinary man, probably harbors some anti-black bias. Not because he's like, oh, I'm gonna get the blacks. No. But because we know that to be true about our implicit attitudes. Now, oh no, a sexist is gonna be in the White House. White women have not chosen the Democratic candidate for president in the modern era. Period. This is a very knowable fact. I want you all to understand that the majority of white women voters have chosen someone other than the Democratic presidential candidate for 40 years. I'm going to say that one more time.
Yeah.
The majority of white women voters have chosen someone other than the Democratic presidential candidate for nearly 40 years. I will say it one more time so that no
Write it
one
down.
around here ever gets confused by the failings of the American media, because what the American media do is they tell you a falsehood, and the falsehood is there's a gender gap in American politics. And I want you to be real clear. There is no gender gap in American political voting. Women do not vote for the Democratic Party. Listen to me one more time. The majority of white women voters have chosen someone other than the Democratic presidential candidate for nearly 40 years. But you will hear repeatedly that women are Democratic voters. How could that be? Anybody in here ever take Stats 101? How could it possibly be that you see a gender gap? That it looks like women are such strong Democratic voters if I'm sitting here telling you that for 40 years the majority of white women have chosen someone other than the Democratic candidate? How could it possibly be?
Right.
How could that be? How is it? Anybody know? Stats 101? Yeah, it's called an interaction effect. Women don't vote for the Democratic Party. Black women vote for the Democratic Party. So I'm gonna say that one more time. There is no gender gap. One more time. There is no gender gap in American politics. White women vote for somebody other than Democrats. The only people who carry the Democratic Party gender gap are black women. And this is not a new fact. This ain't surprising. This ain't about Trump. This ain't even about Obama. This has been true my entire lifetime. And yet, the data are nearly always reported as a gender variable, even though you can't get anybody to talk about black women as women at any other time. There's no other time when black women are just women, except when suddenly they're making a graph about voting. Now, Latinx women are about 50-50, increasingly over the course of the past 10 years becoming Democratic voters, but as recently as George W. Bush, because the man, isn't it fascinating how W looks so different?
Oh, God.
No, it's so true. And what I love is he was like, history gonna judge me, and we're all like, yeah, I mean, yes, sir. He was at the inauguration like, He was,
That
though.
you miss me now.
He really was, though. I was like, you funny, sir. It also, like, the whole primary, everybody suddenly understood why it wasn't Jeb. We were all like, oh. Because we're all like, his whole person, why wasn't it Jeb? Why wasn't it Jeb? And the primary, like, oh, okay. So let me tell you this. I know you're mad at white women. Yeah. I get it. But when you look at every single outcome, from housing to economics to income to wealth, everything, they are basically whooping black women's behinds on all measures. I can understand the anger, but they might not be voting against their interests, because for 40 years they've chosen someone other than the Democrats, and they seem to be doing okay. I'm not saying it's ethical or right or pleasant. I'm saying whiteness is powerful. And your child may or may not be a boy or a girl. But if what you want to do is protect whiteness and the power of whiteness and the power of whiteness to continue to be valuable, then to inherently say that having voted for someone who is promising to protect the value of whiteness is inherently against your interests, when in fact, pretty much everyone who's ever occupied the White House is a sexist. I just think we should ask if whether or not for sure it is certainly against the interests of white women to have voted for someone who is going to protect their racial interests. So the morning after the election, and then I'll stop, my main thought was this. What would have happened if someone had noticed that it was black women all along who were the key to the Democratic Party?
Mm-hmm.
Who are the key to the Democratic Party? Mm-hmm. What if someone had noticed that the only reason that President Obama was elected in 2008, and certainly the only reason that he was reelected in 2012, is because the voting rates of African American women, and particularly the voting rates of African American women in states of North Carolina, Virginia, Ohio, Pennsylvania. I'm gonna say those 4 states again, because I want you to later go back and look at what happened in 2016 on election night. Virginia, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania. In those 4 states which in 2016 no longer had the protections of the Voting Rights Act.
Mm-hmm.
A thing that no candidate ever brought up during the 2016 election, that no moderator ever asked any candidate about during the 2016 election. That the only reason that President Obama was elected in 2008, and certainly the only reason that he was reelected in 2012, is because African American women in those states in particular voted at rates that are only seen in countries where it is illegal not to vote. Literally illegal not to vote. So when you look at the percentages, usually what you're given is like that for every person who voted, who did they vote for? And so what we know is that black women, basically every black woman who voted for Hillary, right? Mm-hmm. But there's always a 2-step choice in voting. One is, am I gonna vote or not? That's turnout, right? And then the second one is, if I'm gonna vote, who do I vote for? Every black woman who voted basically voted for Hillary. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the first choice. Do I go to vote? The 0-1, right? Do I go to vote, right? So yeah, everybody who went to vote voted for Hillary. But what we saw was not a substantial, not huge, but it didn't need to be huge. It didn't need to be huge. It was just enough. And it was structural, right? End of the Voting Rights Act protections in those places. And remember, black women were voting in 2008 and 2012 at rates that are only seen in places where it is illegal not to vote. In countries where it is, now, part of the reason that Congresswoman knew that Trump was gonna win is because the reason you knew that President Obama was gonna be reelected in 2012, even though all the pundits were saying that he wasn't, was because you knew black women was about to go vote like it was illegal not to.
Right.
You knew it, right?
That's
like
right.
you, like
And they read
no,
and
but like
everything.
so when the Congresswoman says, everybody knows Shirley, everybody knows Brenda,
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to put up a graph. You know what everybody knows Shirley means. So if there's a thing that black women know when we just be knowing some stuff. There's an epistemology, there's a knowledge that we have. And we damn sure also knew there wasn't nobody coming out to vote for Hillary like that.
Right.
And so all I want to say is, and I'm done, there are things that the administration that was in office could have done, and there are things that the Clinton campaign could have done that might have created a little bit more of that, given that black women are the only thing that matters strategically in a presidential election for Democrats, full stop. If somebody goes and tries to get another white man to vote, I'm going to scream and jump out a window. Come for us, we're what matters.
Right.
Come on now. teach
Full
us
stop,
right.
period, that's it, just us. So bring down the barriers, and if you can't bring the barriers down, the damn crazy, wildest ass thing about black women is that is that even when we have no arms and legs, we will just turn out to vote.
That's right.
You give
That's
us
that's right.
a reason. And that boy you picked for the VP was not a reason.
Come on.
Oh,
And shattering a glass ceiling was not a reason, because we stand underneath glass when it shatters, and we know that what happens is you get cut.
whoa, 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 whoa.
Oh, come on. Yeah. Whoa. We're in church. We're in church.
Check mark.
Come on now.
Check mark. We know what happens when glass shatters because we know who has to stand underneath it.
Ooh.
Okay. So, as I ask you to begin your lineup at the microphone, and remember your pledge, so start lining up now, please. I am going to ask for a quick response on this, and then we will start with our questions. We want to get a few questions in, so please line up now. We've been devastated. We are heading to a destination called 2018. We're looking at midterm elections. I need to remind y'all that, you know, everybody who's undocumented is not from Mexico or Latin America. We got folks who look like us from the diaspora who will also be affected and are being affected first because they're being blocked. So I'm going to ask the Congresswoman and our distinguished invited guests to just quickly respond on, we've been devastated, get over it, time to move on. So as we move toward our destination, what the hell should we be doing right now? What should we be doing?
Whew. Y'all, come on, this ain't fair. I got to follow Melissa Harris Perry. You know, really, just, you know, biting off of her message here, this is a struggle that I have in the Democratic caucus all the time. First day back, we had a very good friend of mine, Representative Ryan from Pennsylvania, get up and challenge Nancy Pelosi and say the problem is that we need to change the face of the Democratic, the face of the Democrat. And I mean, I was very offended. I mean, I seconded Nancy's nomination, not because Nancy has been wonderful to me all the time, but I just resented, like you said, this notion of the solution is to chase those white men. And the message was very clear that what went wrong is that our flawed candidate Hillary was busy trying to bring us all together, talking about the immigrants, talking about the plight of blacks or the incarceration. That the problem was that we didn't focus enough on getting the white folk from up in upper state Wisconsin and upper state Michigan,
Pray for us.
and it was our fault for not targeting white men. And I fear that for 2020. We're going to be pursuing this vote, which has steadily, white men have never voted for us. And she said white women, but white men either. And so, big fights within the DNC, the DCCC, where to spend resources. My district in Milwaukee, honestly, crickets. The only political messages you got were black voiceovers on the radio talking about how horrible the Democrats were. You know,
Yes.
they didn't sow any seeds into our community. And I told them that. Our black papers, the Courier and so on, do you think that they just bought ads or bought cheap black radio? No, they didn't. And so I just want to say amen. I could have just said amen and turned it over so you'd have more time. But I still want to cling to my notion that one of the things is that we have got to unlock this. We have got to stop being mad. I was mad at my son. He was this big Bernie person, dragged all my grandkids. I saw him on TV walking over broken glass to go vote for Bernie, and saw him on TV, and so we have got to stop that, and we've got to take this message along with the message of stop being bitter, angry, afraid, ashamed. I mean, I just can bear, who was it, the maid last night? The maid came to our room. I was ready to knock her out. I said, where are you from? From Wisconsin. Oh, y'all the people that voted for Trump. Brenda made me give her a tip. So I yield back. Oh, sure.
So, all right, so I got a thing on Trump, though.
Okay, let's hear it.
So if somebody gives you so you voted for Trump. So I mean, I live in the South. So people they like to give you that whole, what y'all doing in the South? You done messed up. I'm like, I'm sorry. He's from Manhattan.
New York values.
Yeah, y'all gave him to us from off Fifth Avenue.
Yes.
Also, just you're welcome, because even if we did vote for Trump, I don't know if y'all noticed, this is wild. It is wild what has happened. It's wild. Okay, so on the one hand, it seems all terrible, right? All terrible, awful, bad, no good, very bad. But it's also, just breathe for a second, just let your shoulders down. Okay, Ashe. I know, because,
I know what Ashe means. Amen.
Whew, MHP be saying stuff and people are like, what is happening? And so it's okay. You're not going to agree with me right now, and you may never agree with me, but it's fun. I'm a college professor. You can just think thoughts and disagree, and you can write me an email later and I'll delete it. It's great. It's wonderful. So here we go. Just a few principles. The first one is you have to be open to critique, right? So this is James Baldwin saying, I love America more than any other country in the world. And exactly for this reason, I insist on the right to criticize her perpetually, right? So, Notorious Big said it by never get high on your own supply. Right, okay. Now.
She's a hot mess, isn't she?
So, yes, the BIG was talking about your crack supply, but also, don't get so important on yourself that you can't be open to critique. So we stay open to critique. So that means all of us, right? Not every critic is a hater. So just notice that on the one hand, Trump is a mess, right? President Trump's a mess, but he's also, because people are flipped out so hard behind him, the splashback effect is fascinating. So, you got white folks on TV talking about white supremacy is wrong.
Just letting you know they're watching us.
You had to know it.
Letting you know.
Right? No, well, that's a Trump effect, right? But that is kind of fat. I had not heard in public white folks even acknowledge that white supremacy existed in the present tense. And these people, Republican white folks on TV, distancing themselves from white supremacy so hard, and some of it is just like this respectability politics thing going on, because like I grew up in Charlottesville, and so like white racism, white supremacy is like standard practice. It's like Tuesday in Charlottesville, but they're real polite in Charlottesville. They don't, it's a real like, it's like white folks' cousin Pookie. So they're like, I can't even believe you brought that mess over here. And respectability politics is so strong that if we let them ride this out for a minute, we might be free by 2022. So on the one hand, it's a hot mess. On the other hand, John McCain up in here saving ACA. Yay! I mean, for real, John McCain is like, oh, you have forgot I'm the damn maverick? You think Lindsey Graham, my boy, like that? Take this. I mean, this shit is crazy. It's literally wild. So, like, during the 8 years of President Obama, people have felt so good about having a black president, they were like, cool, and racism's over, and had just moved on, right? And there's a way in which President Trump's positionality and the desire of so many Republicans to primary him, the civil war going on within the Republican Party is a fascinating cleansing thing going on with them. Now we ain't got to have no parts of. They just doing that thing over there, and we have responsibilities on our own side. But like even the DACA thing, I mean, Cory Gardner, Senator Gardner, was like DACA, and I was like, it's fascinating. So I'm just saying, like, so watch it, have outrage, do what's right? Watch who's doing what, but also breathe through it, because this is not the worst time in America. No. It ain't. No. It just ain't. Don't let middle-class white folks tell you lies that you and your parents know better about, right? So don't put your safety pin on and act crazy. You know better. Right? And so watch carefully, and watch carefully for the thing that no one on a major news network is telling you. So don't watch the magic puppet over here while something important is happening down here. Look down here.
Excellent advice.
All right, so then the second thing I want to say is that what we need to be doing, right, is not worrying about the civil war going on in the Republican Party, because that's some fascinating shit, and who knows what might come out of that. I mean, might actually be a decent, interesting, crucial, critical party that comes out. Because I think, by the way, no one's going to ever all agree. So you actually want a robust, healthy party on the other side. What this party needs to be doing is building from the bottom. Mm-hmm. And so what we need to be doing is having not a civil war, but a robust discussion here. And so it can't be just performative, although a little performance is fun. Right, so a little bit of performance is fun, but we can't just engage in like, he ain't my president, he's just an orange. If all you got on Trump is he got a bad tan, then shut up, because he's so easy that James is mad at me because I stole that from him. He said that to me in the hotel room this morning, and so I'm all right. Footnote husband, okay. Citation, yes. Love you. But like, you've got to, he's just too easy. So let's make real arguments about the man who is the president. Let's not say he's not my president, because then he's not responsible. No, that dude's the president, and he's my president. He has a responsibility to me. I'm a citizen in this country. So, sir, I'm gonna need you to get your life and to do this and to. So, no, you are my president, and you are right. So, but we therefore need to build from the bottom, not from the top, because here's the deal. White men should be in the party. Of course they should. Come on, white men, you're welcome here in my party, where the black girls lead. So a little performance is fine, but the crucial question for the Democratic Party is, what do we actually stand for?
Yes.
the big question isn't what happened. We should read the book, that's fine. But really what happened is that we didn't have a primary. We had 2 terms of a successful presidency, and nobody thought 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue seemed like a good place to live. No one in the Democratic Party ran for office. I'm gonna say that again.
Say it again.
Bernie Sanders was not a member of the Democratic Party. After 2 terms of a successful presidency, one that completely revised the American healthcare system, and a president whose name was Barack Hussein Obama,
Yes.
who was black, who is black, who came out of a state sen- I mean, there's a state senator in the room.
There she is.
I mean, he was a pretty unlikely little candidate. I was living in Illinois. That man, if Jack Ryan had not taken his wife to a sex club,
Right.
he might not have even won the U. I mean, I'm for real. The unlikely pathway of President Obama. I mean, it was weird. It was just like Quakers and Jack Ryan just didn't really run, and they went and got Alan Keyes. And I mean, I might beat Alan Keyes on a good day. And then everybody in the room now from Illinois is like, wait a minute, what happened about sex club? Look that up. Look that up. Look that up. It's just because the Illinois GOP was a hot mess, and so they ain't had no real candidate. But like Jack Ryan was a real candidate. He was like a little white boy who was working over at the Hales Franciscan and had all the little black kids from the inner city. He was lined up behind him. They were like, oh yeah, sister's with me. She remembers, right? And he was going to give him a run, and it was going to be real. But then he didn't have a real candidate. So since he didn't have a real candidate to run against, he's like running around the country making rain for folks. Just tall and black and making rain for other people in the Democratic Party. And then he gives that nice little red blue speech. People like, oh my God, and then president. And so, after that, you would think people would be lined up like this to run for president. You think they'd be like, oh, hey, I'm next, and I'm going. And let's go. But no. Nobody runs for president. And so I'm almost done, but I had a whole year of shit to say. And so I just, real quick, I'm just gonna say it because it's really my very last thing. You cannot expect the American people to be excited about democracy if your party doesn't even, look, say what you want about the Republicans, all of them wanted to be president. LaMarco, Low Energy Jeb, everybody. At one point, the Republicans had an argument in Spanish about who was the more authentic Hispanic. Not us. The Republic, Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio stood on stage and had a Spanish fight. I said, oh shit. We had 2 octogenarian white people running. This is a problem. If it looks like that in 2020,
Okay.
we will lose again. Full stop. You got to think it would be fun to live over in the big White House where Michelle and the girls got the nice vegetable garden. I mean, if that don't seem exciting and like maybe something we should just even try for, I mean, it's weird. So I'm not really enough of an insider to know if people were told to sit down and not run. If we were actively kept from having a choice. But man, it seemed anti-democratic and strange and not exciting and bizarre. So I don't really know what happened, but like now, so read the book or whatever, but then please God get over it. And could we just not do that? So I really don't even care who runs, but I'd like to see all of the 10, 12, 15 people. Let the people choose.
Let the people choose.
I just want to make one response to all of that she said. In this very room 1 year ago, Cornell Belcher warned us that the
did.
people who voted for Barack Hussein Obama were not Democrats, and that if we want them to vote Democrat, we were going to have to go out and get them. They were not Democrats.
He did say that.
I've seen Cornell's
That's right. And we didn't listen to that.
I remember well. Thank you, Congresswoman. The Sergeant Moore here, who we all pay attention to, has said, go, go, go. When they throw us out, we'll stop. So thank you. So question 1, please.
I already know her. I don't want her to come and snatch me.
Oh, me either.
Terry Riley, past president, National Black Caucus. Good being here with my good friend here. Quick question. How do we get into the Democratic Party and make them take our message? Because in the last election cycle, they listened to nothing. Just like you said, the commercials and everything else. Republicans didn't run anyone in Michigan. They didn't run anyone in Wisconsin against all the Democratic candidates, therefore suppressing the vote. How do we negotiate with the party?
Great
Yeah,
question.
and let me tell you something. You know, one of the saddest moments for me, and part of this job, I have to tell you that I hate the most, is raising money. Because the first thing that everybody wants to tell me is that I don't need no money, because I live in a safe district and I don't need no money. And the problem is that when Hillary's campaign called up Wisconsin so proud that they were heading off to Arizona and Utah and Georgia, that they weren't going to spend any money in Wisconsin, then the state party was leaning on me to call all of my best donors and beg and plead. And that was another reason I knew it was just dead in our district. We know that we have to go out and get our people. We have to, you know, black people ain't stupid. You need to ask them to vote. They ain't gonna just automatically show up. And we know how to do a field program, how to go out and get our people, and we couldn't execute our field program because Hillary's case, they were proud of the fact that they weren't going to spend no money and just take us for granted. And so I didn't have enough resources in my coffers to buy the field program, to buy the TV ads. I did my best with the resources that I had. You know, I had people from Racine, 27 miles from Milwaukee, calling me on a daily basis. Can you please get us some resources down here so that we can gin up, because we have street creds with these people. And so to your question, we have got to get control of the finances. I mean, there are plenty of good white folk who are donors who have gotten to the point that say, I am just not going to contribute to the DNC no more. I'll give you money, Gwen, but I ain't giving them no money no more. Because they're tired. You know, we had people like ALC Hastings and all of them cussing the Democratic, Marcia Fudge, I'm gonna name names, cussing the Hillary campaign out, you know, about the way they allocate resources. Yes, we need money in our communities to create this excitement. You know, Barack Obama spent money in our communities, and yes, so we have got to tell them that as Democrats, they got to spend money.
I agree. I totally agree. Next question, please. Did you have a response?
Yeah, I was just going to say, on this point, so the DNC had its worst May since 2003 in terms of fundraising, raising just $4.3 million. So, you know, you would think that like Trump would lead to a fundraising boom, but actually DNC had its worst May since 2003.
We still pissed. Okay. What can I
Good
say?
afternoon. My name is Janae Grant. I'm a former chair of the Advisory Neighborhood Commissioner, and you can thank me for the Costco. But to Congressional Woman Moore, thank you for continuing to have this on a Saturday so that the others in terms of DC, Maryland, Virginia can actually participate for not being here throughout the week. And we miss you. We miss you. We miss you.
Yeah.
But in the spirit of voting and for 2020, my heartbreak and frustration is this pseudo-independent party. They really did disrupt and had a significant slice of the pie regarding the Democrats. What I need you and you is to properly convey that for those who claim to be independents, I don't know who your representative is, okay, because that's not a real, in my opinion, please clarify the independent party of what they really stand for. But we have so many millennials claiming to be independent because they don't want to side with Democrats or Republicans. Get over the categorization. You're going to be in a category, but we need you, and we would have needed you to have supported Hillary at the park, but because you want to be in this independent silo, no, if you're going to be an independent silo, do something. For 2020, they have no agenda. So where are we going to go with this? Because if we don't prepare now, it's going to be more of an increase because they don't want to be boxed. We don't got time for this. Move into something, support the Democrats, give us the narrative to shut that down so that we can move forward with the agenda.
Let me just quote George W. Bush. We need to apply some strategery here. You know, in Wisconsin, after rejecting Donald Trump in the primary, at the end they came together and they not only elected Trump in Wisconsin, but they re-elected Senator Johnson, who was the number one predicted Republican that was going to lose in Wisconsin, because they came together, they pinched their nostrils. And I don't have to go into all of the foibles of Donald Trump. All y'all know we don't waste none of the time going into that. Yeah. They pinched their nostrils and voted for him. I don't want to complain about Bernie. I've served with him, and this is what I want to talk to my friends from California about, because the other day, and we ran out of time. 4 hours is just ain't enough time to have lunch. But
did you say they have lunch?
Right. It just ain't enough time. But right now, I was in Madison, Wisconsin, and y'all know Madison is like, it is the most liberal, other than San Francisco. You just can't find no place that's more liberal. During the campaign, I stepped into Madison, and you could just feel Bernie oozing from the cement. I don't think anybody voted for Hillary in Madison, Wisconsin. So last Sunday, a week ago, I was in Madison, and the whole thing came up like we're going to give her the righteousness test. Where are you, Congresswoman Moore, on Medicare for all, on single payer? And I just told them, and I'm sure I've signed on to these bills at some point, but I said, you know what? Y'all have to forgive me. I am a little bit retarded. I can't even think past September 30th at midnight. I said, I got a blister of Ambien in my purse that I'm going to take at midnight on September 30th. When I stop them, if we can stop them from not only ending Obamacare, but structurally changing Medicaid and keeping it from being, I can't think no further than that. I just think it is so disruptive right now for the Bernie show. I'm sorry, y'all. I need to get over this. This is not strategic right now. But that's what happens when people's egos get involved, and it becomes about them and they're having some debate Monday. It's the craziest thing I ever heard of. So I'm sure that I ain't gonna pass the pure test for having said that, but I said it in Madison, Wisconsin.
Yes, ma'am. And you sticking to it. Would you identify yourself, please?
Hello, my name is Emmanuel Hay. I'm a sophomore at Howard University.
Yay!
So, as you mentioned before,
I'm gonna need you to get your school, because this James Comey thing is not acceptable.
I was here. Oh.
You wasn't there, huh?
I'm gonna just need you to bust a knee when you get up there or something. That's not.
Bust a knee.
Okay.
But as you mentioned before, in terms of characteristics, Trump is no different than, previous presidents. And so we have when he spews out all these tweets and says these outrageous things, we've sort of normalized it for Trump. We say, oh, that's just Trump being Trump, and we've become desensitized to it because the media is always showing it to us. He always has airtime, and we always have him in our mouth. And so when he says something completely outrageous or something, like the inauguration happens, we do have social movements, but they're very ephemeral. They disappear after one day. We were here in DC, and after the Women's March, it was completely deserted. And we don't have these consistent movements where we have mass amounts of people moving out on a daily basis. And with social media, it's so easy for us to just pop up on one day, but then be completely gone the next. So do you think Donald Trump and this whole entire presidency is enough of a catalyst to truly move people? Or is it something that we just bring up for one day and then are just deserted the next?
That's yours. I don't know that much about social media.
So I love your question, and I also really appreciate the way that you are watching the social and political world. And more than anything, I want to really affirm the sort of the process that you're using right now, and say that as you move, so you're a college sophomore, for goodness sake. So as you move forward in whatever professional work you're doing, I just want to affirm that the level of critique that you're bringing, and the extent to which you are not just accepting the thing that you are seeing in the world, is more important than any particular piece of information you will learn in college or anywhere else, right? So I'm very excited to see that from you, and it's wonderful.
Thank you.
So I'd say a couple of things. One, I think of the Women's March as a kind of representation of, the Women's March in that moment on the 21st of January was not itself the social movement. It was it was kind of the response to the inaugural moment. And actually, the Women's March as an organization that continues to do work is continuing. And so, in fact, Linda Sarsour and Tamika Mallory were here yesterday on one of the panels, and they actually, they were organizers prior to the march. They continue to be organizers, and so both the thing called the Women's March, which is itself now a 50, it's a C4 and a C3, so it is both an organization that does charitable work or basically can take the tax write-off, but also one that can make political contributions, right? So it's doing a ton of organizing, including, for everybody in the room, in Detroit at the end of October. Yeah, the 26th and 27th, or 27th and 28th. So they're going to have a really kind of intense on-the-ground conference there. So and actually, social media is a really good way to follow what the National Women's March is doing. But also, you can join any of the local affiliates, right? So one of the things they were really good at was to capture all the information of the people who came to the Women's March. So that's one thing I'd say about it. The other thing is, I think we have to be really careful, because I think part of what happens is that we've taught the civil rights movement poorly. And so we teach the civil rights movement as though it was constantly all of these marches and right. But actually, sort of that 15 years, or 15 to 18 years of movement and action was one. It wasn't just sort of a thing that happened. It was connected all the way back, to the efforts of Black folks to resist white supremacy in America, really from the beginning up until now. But that sort of mid-century civil rights movement that led to a lot of the legislative action that we think of in the 1960s was about strategery. It was about a lot of strategic action that occurred, but with many, many local leaders that were doing a ton of work, and many of them were women and young people who were innovating new strategies all the time. What Dr. King, who we think of as the leader, understood was that during one decade of that moment, he had the power to bring cameras with him. And those cameras, relatively new to the American consciousness, affected how people understood what racism was in a really new way. And so that part of the strategy is how we teach it. So I think we got to be careful to think that there was ever a time when like people was just moving all the time. All right. Because what I think is that if you look on the ground right now, BYP 100 and you know, that in Detroit and in Chicago and in Florida, and like there are, all of those organizations are currently working right now. Last thing I'll say about Trump, he is a genius of the media. The reason that Trump ran for president is in part because he understood that the media has no attention span, and so his ability to get them off message real fast is, so like, for example, the day that the Muslim travel ban,
Yeah.
he tweets the crazy shit about Mika Berinsky.
Yes.
So instead of media staying on message and focusing on thousands of people who are impacted by a public policy that is racist and is going to affect who we are as a country within the world, and all of these people, all of their families, and our economic consequences. We up in here talking about one white woman who had mean things said to her on Twitter. Now let me be clear. I could not check my @replies for 4 years. Because for the 4 years that I was on air, every single day, people were like, I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna rape you, I'm gonna kill your mama, I'm gonna rape your mama, I'm gonna kill your baby, I'm gonna rape your baby. I mean, it's Twitter. Like, I mean, it was never the president who said that, but like, you know, a woman on Twitter having people say horrible, terrible, sexist, awful things is like, again, Wednesday.
Wednesday.
So, yeah. So we should have been done something about that. Twitter could have, I mean, in fact, there's been whole social movements of people trying to get Twitter to do something about that. But, you know, Trump ain't no dummy. So on the day that he does something that affects people in a real way, he just does one little dumb thing about one little skinny white woman, and then the whole media flips, oh my God, Mika! And we all run over, let's say, oh Mika, how you feel, Mika? Oh, Mika, 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 Mika. I'm sure Mika's fine.
Wait, it's a shiny toy.
So that's why I said, don't look at that, don't look at the puppet hand. What's happening over here?
Good.
Those emails came out after the Access Hollywood tape.
Right.
That was the first. That was the. Yes,
Homeboy
right.
flipped the switch on the inauguration so bad. It was my favorite thing in the world. Everybody was talking about, oh, you know, there was, everyone was like, this was an illegitimate election. It was an illegitimate election. It was an illegitimate election. Then we go to the inauguration. People were like, I'm not going to the inauguration because it was an illegitimate election, right? Because people were still recounting votes, right? So then we go to the inauguration. It's a little tiny, you know, he purposely seems to shut people out, right? Can't go, the inauguration's tiny. He was like, it was a huge, there were too many people there and you just couldn't see him on the mall. I don't know how that happened. It must have been voter suppression. And then the same people who the day before had been like, it was illegitimate, they were like, why are you gonna say it was voter suppression? This was a completely legitimate election. I was like, oh, you did that, sir. Wow. So yeah, you can't be against something just because Trump is for it, i.e. James Comey teaching at Howard. So, like, let's just, so black, no, you didn't do that, no, I know, I did that. So look, black folks and Democrats, the head of the FBI is not your friend just because he told on Trump. He is the head of the FBI. Him having the Martin Luther King, be careful on campus because a thunderbolt might come, you lightning just burn that whole bad boy down. That cannot be right. That man, the President Obama had said, President Obama said, you know, there is no such thing as a Ferguson effect, because there was no such thing as a Ferguson effect. Literally, there could not have been a such thing as a Ferguson effect because of the timing. So President Obama had said there is no such thing as a Ferguson effect. The next morning, James Comey was at the University of Chicago, where, of course, we all know President Obama had taught. And he says, oh, there's a chill wind blowing because of the Ferguson effect. Now, see, President Obama is a better president than Donald Trump. Because, I mean, President Trump could not have fired James Comey because I would have already fired James Comey. No, sir, I had already said there is no Ferguson effect. Yeah. And then you gonna come out your face the next day at my school talking about that? No, sir, there is not one. But see, President Obama is a good person, and he was a very good president. And so he was like, oh, well, the FBI, is independent. But, sir, that was some hot.
Yes.
And just because somebody is against Trump does not make them your friend.
Amen.
We have to be critical. And like, I know this whole Title IX thing and Betsy DeVos, it just seems like it must be bad. I know, but actually read it. Because let me just say this, working on a college campus. Campus sexual assault is a hot mess. And so these are not necessarily good, but let me just say the fact that they were revised does not make them, because the ones that existed were a hot mess. So we ought to read them. All I'm saying is remember, be open to critique. Don't get high on your own supply. We should not be them. We should not be the people who every time Obama did something, it was bad just because Obama did it. Mm-hmm. We should be people who, if someone's like, well, why is it bad? We should be able to say, oh, because A, B, C, not because Trump did it.
Right.
We should be better. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you. We're going to take these three, thank you very much for that, these three questions quickly, and then I'm going to ask our panelists to do a closing remark. Please identify yourself.
Good afternoon. So on the morning after the I didn't want to take up my time for that. Jasmine Johnson from Wisconsin.
Okay.
So on the morning after the 2012 election, everybody was rah, 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 excited because of the re-election. I work for a Fortune 50 company who has a very robust PAC. So I downloaded our PAC report the next morning, and while everyone was in celebratory mode for the re-election, I noticed that my company had already written checks for candidates for the following 2 elections. And so it feels, of which we do support the women, so yes, we do. But it felt as if our community is always in a fire drill. We do not have activated a pipeline of leadership to run, so that's why we find ourselves in this state. So when we look at even the city of Milwaukee, and I've had conversations with my peers, they want to march, and that's wonderful. We're upset for, the district attorney who's not, filing charges, but did we vote? It's also the mayor who appoints the police chief. So if we're upset about these things, it's yes to vote and to invoke our voice. We have to do the other factors as well. So how do we get prepared for next year in the state of Wisconsin and across the country to activate our people to understand that local elections are important, and then also from just not pegging ourselves as donors in the church house, but when the governor of Wisconsin can get more than 70% of his campaign dollars from outside of the state, how do we mobilize our dollars as well in order to look at the importance of investing in PACs or supporting candidates that represent us? I don't really see the importance from a collective whole from our community voicing that as a priority and showing the importance of our dollars shifting to back candidates.
Well, that's how, one thing is that I want to talk about the money piece separately, because everybody ain't got money, especially in a place like Milwaukee, but there are things that we could do. Brenda works very closely with a lot of the church community, and we just want the church to do really simple things, like put in the church bulletin that it's election day. That is not illegal. Some people, they have scared black people to death about being active, and we have to remember, well, maybe some of y'all don't remember, but it was the church that led the civil rights movement, and there are not a lot of young people and millennials that go to church regularly, but I'm from the Polly Williams, the late great Polly Williams school of thought. You feed people, they'll come. If they know that on Wednesday there are going to be some chicken wings and a freedom school there at the church, there's no reason that you can't have candidates that come to the church for information only, to give you a presentation. I mean, these are institutions that we're not using adequately. There shouldn't be church buses parked on election day. So these are resources that are not being, you know, the lady with the great big old hat that gives the announcements every Sunday. That's you. I mean, it's you know, I was in a church in Georgia, you know, supporting the candidate and had to beg them to, in the announcements, tell people that it was election day that following Tuesday. The deltas and the AKAs and the links. I mean, these are people in our community that have more resources than other people, you know. And the thing of it is, we have in our community deltas. I mean, they need to. I can tell you the top 10 wards in Milwaukee where there was a huge voter fall off, and they all in the 4th and the 6th Senate district. In the black districts. I wanted it to be in the Spanish community, but it wasn't. It was in the black community. I was praying that it was them. And I mean, the thing of it is that, you know, a lot, you know, you could look at me and tell that I ain't missed a meal in a long time. You know, so we just get too fat and comfortable. You know, because you can adopt a block and walk around the block and knock on the doors. I can tell you who didn't vote in your community. And then in an off election season, just give people some education about what's at stake. These people do have no idea, the people who need it most, that they are at risk of not having Medicaid, you know, and that your grandmother who stays at home because she has home health services is going to be the first one cut off. They don't know that. And it's up to us. We can't say that because I can't write Gwen a $5,000 check that I ain't going to do nothing. Because there is something you can do. There are people in this room who, they are called Friends of Gwen. They send me $10 a month. And I'm telling you, they are my most treasured donors in the world. They really are. They support me. They volunteer. And I mean, you can do that. You know, you can surely, and I'll close with this because I know the time is short, but what's the former mayor of Atlanta, Shirley?
Jack.
Right. Shirley Franklin. She said when she first ran, she said anybody that would promise her that 10 people would show up, she would show up at their house. And the night before the election, she was midnight, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, going from house to house to house. And people would serve, you know, lemonade and cookies, making that donation and getting they 10 neighbors together for Shirley Franklin to come and campaign them. I mean, we can do that.
Yes.
We can do that.
Thank you.
I don't want to miss that insight that they had already made donations for 2 Forward.
Yeah.
I don't want to miss that real quick. So just 2 other things we can do. Because so we have to run for office, but running for office is so hard without money.
Yes, it is.
So you know, I always, you know, ask folks, why did you run? I looked at you, y'all like, mm-hmm. So I wonder about, in addition to the voting now, also the incubation programs for candidates. And incubation takes a long time, right? So I got 8 chickens, 3 ducks, 4 bunnies. By the time we get home, who knows? I mean, they're bunnies. There could be 400. It's hard to tell. Oh, that I have 8 chickens, 3 ducks, and 4 bunnies, and that by the time we get home, there could be 400 bunnies because they're bunnies. So you know, we real country. So I know a lot about incubation and about, you know, planting stuff and seeds, and it takes a while, right? So, you know, I spent a lot of time in the garden and with the chickens and thinking about this, right? And there's actually also a political message there, which is you have to grow it in your own space. And so I wonder about one of the things that allowed the Republican Party to make the South, for example, red instead of blue, where it had been for a long time, was that they incubated. They stopped thinking in the next election cycle and started thinking 3 and 4 election cycles out. And we probably need to. And even being willing to take losses now, because we're going to take them anyway, while incubating. So for me, that means both incubating the money and the candidates. So beginning to identify in our communities folks who will be ready for school board in 2 years, and for city council, and potentially for mayor. And so that's going to mean a couple of things. One, we got to be able to see it in girls and women. And I'm all, I like a tall man in a suit, but if the only person that we ever think can run for office is the tall boy in a suit, and we only ever ask them to run, then we're going to miss our Gwens. So we got to ask our boys, but also our girls, to run. And we just got to say to them, have you ever thought about running for office? Well, even if you ain't thought about running, we're going to have, let's get off Wednesday. We're going to have Thursday night meetings at the house. And we're going to come by the house, and every Thursday night we're going to learn one new thing about politics. And we're going to eat. And so come by and eat, and we're going to learn one new thing about politics, and we're going to leave behind $100, and this is just going to grow, and the money will grow, and then the next person who's going to run, we're going to keep watching the open seats, and then when there's a seat that's ready and a candidate that's ready, we're going to put the money behind it, and we're going to put the candidate behind it, and you're going to have a crew. Right, and the thing is, also, then y'all are going to be a squad, and you can be a squad for each other, right? You're going to squad up, and all you people going to get together, and so let's start making incubators, right? And so let's start making incubators to grow candidates and to grow our money together, right? And
Brown Deer Board of Trustees,
Right
she
there.
running right there. We all for Wanda Montgomery right now.
so let's do it.
Yeah.
So let's do that, and let's think about how we can do that on a big scale, so that we can incubate our talent and make sure that we're incubating talent that's our boys and our girls and our brown and our black folks together, and our brown and our black and our progressive white folks, so that when our white folks run, they actually know real brown and black folks and not just imaginary ones, because they have spent some time with us and they've eaten with us, and they've and they're not saying weird ass shit when they go out and just, because that's terrible. And the black folks, let's incubate with brown folks so we don't say weird shit when we go into their community, because that's terrible. And we don't speak bad Spanish if the DNC don't.
They don't do that, Thank you.
But thank you for getting us to think longer time horizon.
Absolutely. Next question, please.
Good afternoon, panelists. My name
Pull
is
the mic
Joyce
down a little bit
Edwards.
if you could. Thank you.
Yikes. My name is Joyce Edwards. I'm from Chicago, Illinois, and I so miss Nerdland.
Yeah.
You guys were talking about how do we get people excited? How do we get them excited enough to come out and vote? Many of us look at our Congress people today, and Congress doesn't have a high approval rating across the country.
Sorry.
I suggest that we cut down some of the rhetoric and start doing things. For instance, Hillary Clinton could have possibly changed things if she had gone to Flint, Michigan, and stood on the necks of those people until they fixed the water situation out there, poisoning our children and families out there, and she didn't. There was a lot of rhetoric, but there was no action. So I would suggest, again, that especially our black Congress people understand the mantle, what they carry, what we are all depending on them to do. My original question, though, had to do with trying to understand the election results. And I've come away with some really insightful information in that regard, trying to understand what did happen. Right now, they're telling us—
I'm sorry, dear. I need your question coming, please, because they're going to put us out.
You all said that you knew that Donald Trump would win. Do you have confidence in the vote that just happened in light of the Russian interference, or is this another rabbit hole?
Oh, good question. Good question. Thank you, Chicago. Good question.
Well, Wisconsin was definitely one of the states that got hacked, and they have said, oh, we don't think that it had any impact. I can tell you on my cell phone, I got several calls, where they knew I hadn't voted yet, said that it's not too, a very clearly Slavic voice, telling me that if I vote for Hillary Clinton, she was going to deliberately start World War III. And somebody knew that would scare the hell out of me, that they can look at my voting record tell that I was kind of a peacenik. All kind of algorithms being used. One of the things I think they did was everybody on Facebook who talked about mass incarceration, I mean, that was a signal of who you were, you know, got targeted with the super predator stuff, you know, to suppress the vote. So, you know, nobody is ever going to say that it changed the outcome of the election, but guess what? As a politician, we spend millions of dollars on messaging. This is what most politicians do with their money, is spend it on trying to influence y'all. And then I'm not going to waste our time trying to defend black members of Congress. We work like a dog. But, you know, a part of this game in politics is not to allow other people to have any victory so that people will think you ain't doing nothing. I mean, look at Trump strategically going through everything Obama did and trying to undo it, trying to erase him from history. I know Scott Walker did it to me. He got in office and spent his first months undoing Gwen Moore. And so it's hard, you know, and it's hard when companies do their financing when they give Republicans 3-4 times as much money as they give you. They give white men twice as much of either party than you. They tell you you don't need no money. And, you know, even the idea that I'm going to incorporate is trying to have regular kind of meetings and bring people together. That will cost money to provide them chicken wings so that we can have freedom school. And so, you know, it's you know, the Black Caucus in Flint, Michigan, just to do this, I mean, along with other Democrats, I mean, they did get stuff done administratively through to, for example, expand the Head Start program in just Flint, Michigan. The CHIPS program, expanding the amount of Medicaid that would be spent there, because those kids are going to have long-term consequences. As a member of the Black Caucus, I did go to Flint, Michigan. Hillary should have went. But we do stuff and we don't get credit for it.
True. Final question, please.
How are you? I'm Lex Jordan Ebebu. I'm an attorney from North Carolina.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, sometimes I feel that we as a people are waiting for the party as a whole to court us, forgetting that white liberalism doesn't mask innate prejudice. So I wanted to ask y'all, as people of influence, how do we alter the mind frame of our people, especially our youth, so that we vote in every election, even if the candidate is not shining in gold, so that we can sustain that pressure for things that affect us?
Great question. Great question.
You take that one. Oh, my God.
Well, I mean, so where in North Carolina?
Okay.
Raleigh, yeah.
So, you know, it's an interesting question about where you believe the onus lies, where the burden lies. I would place the burden in a different place. So I'm just gonna push back a little. And so I feel you, because the weight of the consequences rests most heavily on our communities. So if there is a drop off and the outcomes of the election are such that the public policies being made are troubling, then our communities will carry that burden most heavily. But that's kind of the point. We will then be carrying the burdens most heavily. Man, you know how hard public transportation is in North Carolina? Mm-hmm. It's terrible. You know, it's like, this is part of the story I do when I'm, you know, teaching Black politics and history, is, you know, how much of it was around transportation integration. Mm-hmm. And then I point out, so when was the last time y'all rode a bus? Because part of how the South dealt with integration of public transportation was to be like, oh, y'all want to integrate the bus? Cool, we ain't gonna have no more buses. Like actually, and schools too. So that, for example, in the city of New Orleans, did they just stop building public schools after 1955? Full stop. didn't build no more. So there's just a massive disinvestment in all public infrastructure. So that something like going to vote is just not a, so this was the whole conversation we had about voter ID. People are like, just go get an ID, sir. Right?
30 miles from my house.
Right. And so when they gutted the Voting Rights Act, it was not a small thing. Mm-hmm. So I'm saying all of this just to say this. I absolutely agree with the first part of your statement, that our bigger challenge may be not so much that white supremacy showed up in the Republican Party, but the extent to which whiteness decided to stand its ground within the Democratic Party in 2016. And that when whiteness showed up to stand its ground in the Democratic primary, when Bernie Sanders, from my perspective, was running a primary that felt to me like he was saying, let me show you that what Barack Obama did wasn't really all that special, because I'm about to do it too. But then didn't. That when they were so determined that as long as the polls showed that black folks preferred Hillary, that was enough, as opposed to recognizing that you have to give folks who have that many barriers, you have the responsibility to do one of two things, and probably both, because you have the power. You gotta bring down the barriers, or you have to give them massive motivation to get over them. Mm-hmm. You probably have a responsibility to do both, but you must do at least one. If you both leave the barriers in place and make people feel like, meh, then there are a whole group of people who will nonetheless, because we just are who we are, gonna get up over the barriers. But because, grandmama died and fought and bled and watered the way, blood of the slaughtered, walking it through, rising sun, here we go. But I mean, since the margins are like that, so I feel you, but the truth is we so massively overperform. I mean, you're asking me, how do we make sure black folks overperform shocking. You sort of have to go ask white folks what the fuck they're doing. Mm-hmm. Like, seriously. By education and income, white people ought to be voting at about 10 to 20 percentage points more than they are. Black people's voting in America for our education, income, and where we live is so high, literally because of like grandma, Jesus, slavery, and one another. So like, we about tapped. I mean, I really do wish I had the graph, because like for real, when you look at white men's voting, white men who basically, it's all the graphs are so crazy. Like when you look at like white men, all the education, all the money, and then like where their voting should be is kind of like, because they're the ones actually looking for the shiny perfect. We are so, I mean, like we're looking for shiny perfect? Please, who vote, shiny perfect? Who was that? What, Dukakis? I mean, we show up for the most random candidates all the time. Yeah. No, people don't usually even, I mean, they mostly act like there's something wrong with us. Like coming to talk to us harms their soul. And yet we just go over there and,
We do.
And we just go, okay, all right, fine. So, I don't know. I just don't think that one's on us. Some of y'all heard me say yesterday, literally all they had to do was just give us a Supreme Court nominee. If President Obama had, because he knew that nominee was not going to get a vote. He knew, everybody in the White House knew that whoever they were going to nominate was not getting a vote, right? So they knew that whoever they were going to nominate was not going to get a vote. They knew. There was no question. They weren't going to vote on it.
That's right.
Right? Guaranteed. So they also remembered how we acted up when Loretta Lynch's nomination got held up.
Right.
Y'all remember how we acted up?
Right.
So imagine this, just my favorite. Sometimes I still just have happy dreams about it. Imagine if they had nominated a black woman.
Woo!
Ooh.
And she had just been sitting there waiting for Hillary to win to get a vote. Yeah, everybody in the room was like, and y'all know Color of Change would have been sending out an email every day, counting the days, right? And it would have been like, today, sister girl is waiting day 73. So if we vote, sister girl, and so now in my most enjoyable imagination, they would have nominated Anita Hill.
Oh. Oh.
So that she could have spent the rest of her natural life
Come on
sitting
now.
next to Clarence. Balancing the universe out. Because it wasn't going to get a vote, right? It was not going to get a vote. But if black women had been like, okay, I'm not just voting for Hillary and for like the Supreme Court in some kind of random sense, but like I'm voting for Hillary and Anita.
Yeah.
You talking about what the deltas and the AKAs and the zetas and the links and the people have been like, let's go.
That's what the folks in the corner.
Yeah, like what day is election day? People have had it tattooed on the inside of the arm, the back of the neck. It'd have been on the Facebook page. You have to give people an actual reason, like a motive, it's a real, and that's just not people's job. Like, that's your job. You're a political strategist. Have some strategy. Like, do you remember the name of the man who was nominated? No, of course you don't. No, some of you do because it's DC. But you have to have a thing. You gotta, it's nice that you got the white man that speaks the funny Spanish, but give me an actual Latina.
Right.
When you break the glass ceiling, take somebody with you.
Yeah.
Go to be like, since I'm going, let me show you who I'm taking with me, because my whole thing is about taking somebody. You think, let's see, would have been, they'd have burnt this place down. Here we go. Show me that you're interested in taking someone with you, because what, the white boy from Virginia needs a chance? Ma'am, look around the party. Stop it. I understand he's your boy and you trust him, and so fine, make him your chief of staff. I don't give a shit. But look, this is an election. You gotta move your people. What are you doing? I literally was sitting there like, woo. Literally, what are you doing? What constituency is he bringing? Who is he delivering? The stepdad constituency? What is it? There's like the folk? See, who was talking to these people?
When I could understand every word Tim Kaine said in Spanish, I knew.
Don't do that. He seems like a nice person. He does. But you saw, Joe Biden was mad. You could just see it at the DNC, when they both spoke on the same night, and Joe was like, let me show you how to be a VP. It was.
Don't you just wish you could bottle and sell these two? Wow. I need to say this. I am going to, first of all, on behalf of this room, say thank you to first Melissa Harris Perry, and then give her her props. And then to Congresswoman Gwen Moore for all that she does. And the sergeant has told me to hand her the mic. I'm like, you got to come up.
You know, sometimes it's more difficult for people, if you ask somebody something publicly, sometimes it's more difficult for them to say no. So right now, I'm going to ask Melissa Harris Perry, because we just ran out of time, we need to have part 2 next year. We need to have part 2 next year.
So we are going to get tossed out of the room, but I need